Thank you for joining us today on Vital for Colorado Radio. We are part of the Connect and Collaborate Network. I am your on-air producer, Jon Ekstrom, and with me today, as always, our chairman and CEO, also an attorney with Robinson Waters and Odorzio, Peter Moore.
John, thanks a lot. I'm very happy to be here, and it's a high point in my month. We've been doing this for 3 years now, and this is almost like a Star Wars type thing. Season 3, episode 17.
Congratulations.
Well, thanks. John does a great job in terms of organizing. Our guest today is Sandra Solin, and I guess you have good news to announce. You've just joined the national law firm of Kutak Rock after 20-some years of having your own lobbying practice.
That's correct. Yes.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about that change?
Yeah, no, I made the decision to join Kutak Rock national law firm, and right after 25 years of having my own government affairs communications firm, made that move, and I'm really excited about it. It presents an opportunity to help build a national government relations practice in the multiple states and offices and throughout the country, but Denver being the primary place in which we're building, and we have representatives throughout the offices, Arizona and Chicago, and Omaha, of course, is our headquarters office, and we've got a former U.S. Senator in that office. So really excited to join this firm. Presents a really unique opportunity to do something a little bit different after many years of doing one thing. I've been practicing
law since 1981. We'll be kind enough not to count the years, John. But 1981, and Kutak Rock, I've known it since before then, since law school. It's a great law firm, and it's great practice, and it's very exciting that they're adding this new capability. And I think the convergence of law, lobbying, politics, economics, in reality, when you're a lawyer, you're dealing with all those issues.
Absolutely. That's exactly a perfect way to describe it. This convergence, this intersection between politics and law and business, quite frankly, is really important. And having the full spectrum of capabilities that lawyers bring along with a political sensibility, I think is really exciting. And a number of law firms do this, but we're looking to do it a little bit differently than most have done in the past. And that's one of the exciting pieces for me.
Given your track record and given that you founded Capital Solutions 20-some years ago, I think you bring unique perspective, because if you visit Capital Solutions website, you can see a list of clients that you've worked with, and it's everything from retail to energy to healthcare to government to nonprofit to economic development. It's all there. So the bounty of your experience, I think, will serve them well.
Thank you very much. In fact, I was asked to do sort of a summary of my business. We've represented about 53 clients over those years, and again, that full spectrum of interest, primarily business, but the full gamut of industry sectors and so forth. And it's been really exciting, just a wonderful mix of clients over the years and issues that we've been able to engage in and do some good work, a lot of successes.
I have a list of clients past, and these are all brand names and names that people would know and have been important for economic development in Colorado.
Yeah.
I think our goal today is really to talk about your background a little bit, and in particular, I understand that you have been for an awful long time the issues manager for the Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance, which is an interesting combine of now 5 economic development groups north of Denver. And north of Denver is where the politics are happening. So
that's where the rubber meets the road.
That's where the rubber meets the road. And I think you've been doing that also for, I don't know, 20-plus years?
Yes, I have been since a couple of years after its original founding. I've been working with that organization, and it's a unique entity in that it brings together chambers of commerce, economic development agencies in the northern Colorado region, Larimer and Weld counties, to really advocate for the issues that are unique to that region. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a bit. But it encompasses the Fort Collins, Loveland, and Greeley chambers. chambers, so the large 3 communities in that region, along with the 2 economic development entities, Northern Colorado Economic Alliance, and they've shifted their name to one NOCO, and then Upstate Colorado Economic Development in Weld County. And it's a cool organization and unique.
I served for a bit on the leadership council of Upstate Colorado.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, when a terrific organization.
Yes,
I was there when Larry
amazing.
Burkhart was running it.
Oh, very good.
And so I know the work of Upstate quite well. I think very highly of the chambers that are associated, made presentations at all of those chambers, and the fact that there's regional cooperation that allows these groups to sort of advocate for themselves against the monolith of Denver
Yes.
and the metro area is really, really important
Yes.
because so much of the engine that drives the economy of Colorado is centered in northern Colorado.
It's remarkable. That's exactly right. You've got obviously the energy sector, which is huge just on the traditional conventional side of oil and gas. You've got the renewable energy side of the energy component of our state. And agriculture is huge. Weld County is one of the largest producing ag communities and counties in the country.
Yep.
We're one of the fastest growing regions in the country and certainly the state. And so much is happening there, and it's not stopping. That's the amazing thing. And
also a great, important research school, and the amount of innovation that's going to northern Colorado. I've through economic development trips, I do those myself, and I've met representatives of many of these groups, and there's so much going on right now.
Right now, absolutely. Bioscience is a tremendous sector in northern Colorado, and as you suggest, the universities system, both CSU and UNC, and then of course you have great community colleges that are operating up there as well, Front Range and Ames. And again, that word intersection, the intersection between business and education is incredibly vibrant in northern Colorado, and again, sort of unique amongst the state, and that sort of the working relationships that happen up there are pretty special.
And also very quickly growing residential populations that are moving right up on traditional industrial operations. They've been there for a long time.
Yeah.
And a little bit of conflict.
A little bit of conflict, and I think that that's one of the challenges that, of course, is going to face the region into the future. We're growing at a remarkable rate, and there's a lot of land to be developed, of course. But as you suggest, the history of the region is agriculture and industry. Manufacturing has been there for a long time, and then, of course, oil and gas. And you are seeing that the likelihood and existing sort of conflict amongst the citizens in those industries.
Absolutely.
So that's our show today.
That's right. Let's get in.
And before we do that, one of the things that we like to do, and one of the reasons we were interested in having you on our show, is we like to talk about the journey. You know, how did you get here? How did you start your career in public advocacy? Because that's not for everyone.
Yeah.
It's interesting getting out there, you know, making a difference, engaging in issues of controversy, in public policy, in things that matter. And so can you tell us a little bit about the background? How did you get started? Give us a snapshot of the journey.
Yeah, thank you. It's been a long journey, but a tremendous one. And I think the core of it has always been sort of this sense of wanting to make a difference and bringing voice to those who need a voice in the process. My journey started as a graduate of University of Colorado. I was a political science major there, and decided I wanted to go to law school, but opted to take a couple years off before going. I got into DU and deferred my enrollment for a couple years to work, and I worked at the legislature as a staff person drafting legislation, and enjoyed sort of seeing the inner workings of the legislative process, and was ready to move on after 2 years to go to law school. And I had one of the deans of the lobby, Frank DiFilippo, who you probably remember, Peter.
Used to be my neighbor, actually.
Oh, no kidding.
Up in
what a small world.
Up in Genesee.
Yes.
So, I lived less than, I don't know, how do you equate this in mountain terms, but like 3 blocks from him, essentially. So yeah, I know Frank a little bit.
He was one of the deans of the lobby, as you probably well know, incredibly influential, and really liked bringing people up. And I was someone he identified as someone who could be helpful and influential in this process. And he said,
he identified talent.
He identified talent. That's right, exactly. But he told me, he and I sat down for coffee, says, oh my gosh, don't spend the money on law school. Let's get you going on this career and see if you might like it. And it never occurred to me to be a lobbyist. I mean, I wanted to be a prosecutor is actually what I wanted to be. Although I was intrigued by the policy side, but I had this sense of wanting to go into the prosecution side. And he took me under his wing for a year, gave me a client, the Rocky Mountain Windsurfing Association, and passed.
Did not know such an organization existed.
Who knew? There's an association for just about everything, and passed legislation that following year to reduce some regulations. And
on windsurfing.
On windsurfing.
Okay.
And in fact, you both know Bill Jerky, former Representative Bill Jerky. He was my bill sponsor of that first piece of legislation. Wow. He now sits on the board of the NCLA, so full circle.
He's been a guest on this show, and when I was working at Noble Energy, helped him stand up fuel.
Oh, that's right. That's exactly right. And he does an amazing job for the industry up in northern Colorado. That summer, when I was then unemployed because I had just been mentored, I was working as a legal temp for U.S. West at the time, and I was in the file room, and I heard someone talking about this legislation that passed to reduce regulations for windsurfers. I thought, oh my gosh, that was me. I did that. And it was in that very moment that I realized, my gosh, I had an opportunity to affect someone's life. I mean, so minuscule in broad context, but it changed the course of my career. And I made the decision to pursue this and literally hung a shingle that later that year, Capital Solutions, and have been plugging away ever since. Got really engaged in Republican politics and connected with various folks along the way, and we can talk about that. But that was that turning point for me, was hearing and sensing how public policy matters in people's lives. Yeah, it matters.
It affects change in a real way.
Yeah.
Peter, did it ever occur to you not to spend the money on law school?
Actually, sort of went to law school by accident. I was actually in graduate school in what was then West Germany, and I ran out of money. And I knew that I was going to run out of money because I'm a pretty smart guy, and I can do a budget and everything. And so I applied to various law schools, and it was August 1978, and I phoned up my dear mother and told her to make phone calls around the country at these various law schools and try to find the best deal. And I came to the University of Denver because they offered a scholarship, and I'm a loan at 3%, national defense student loan.
Oh, wow.
So I didn't know it. I came from Heidelberg, West Germany to Denver.
How about that?
By way of Buffalo, New York.
By the way of JFK, actually. But it was kind of an empty town in 1978. It was striking. It was all parking lots. It all had been torn down in anticipation of the new building boom. And so old Denver was still here. Then there was a lot of parking lots, and it was kind of fun. I went to law school and ended up liking it. I found a job as a first-year law student a couple weeks after I started, so I was very lucky that way. Wow. And here I am many years later. Yeah. And still enjoying it very much.
Yeah. Well, Peter, I'm not going to tell you why, but 1981, very important year in my development as well.
Really.
So, but I'll share why once we're off mic. Sandra, are you a Colorado native?
I moved to Colorado when I was 3.5, and my family
close enough.
Close enough, although the natives will tell you, technically no.
As a native, I grant you that.
Oh, okay, that's nice.
Not that I have any jurisdictional sort of say here, but as a native, anecdotally, I think you get a pass.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate that. My family moved from the Chicago area, north of Chicago. Oh, how about that? Yeah. We moved first to Denver for 6 months, and then my father got a job up in Vail as the controller for one of the lodges up there, and he became a CPA. So I grew up in Vail. Wow. Moved there when I was 4, and and my mom is still there. My father passed, but it's a nice place to have grown up.
So as you hung out your shingle, getting those first clients, always interesting, always challenging. As I hung out my own shingle 3.5 years ago now, you go, okay, what do I do now? And yes. As you were pursuing this and you knew you had an interest in public policy, what was it like getting those first clients, and who were you representing?
Oh gosh, Great question. You know, my father was a CPA, so he had his own business, and it just really didn't occur to me not to do my own thing in many ways. Right. And part of it, I often say, if I knew then what I know now, I probably wouldn't have had the guts to do it. So naivete played a large role in just my driving forward. But really, it was making connections, and as you know, in politics, so much of our work entails who we know. It's a relationship business, and really got to meet and was intentional in the networking with various folks. And one of my first clients was the Women's Chamber of Commerce. Again, an unpaid client, but nonetheless, building base.
Roster,
exactly.
Yep.
And of course, they're still kicking today, and advised them and built a platform for them. And then the Automobile Manufacturers Association was probably my first client, paid client. Yeah.
Was Tim Jackson there then?
Oh, it was the Manufacturers Association. In fact, though, early on, Tim Jackson, he's pretty amazing. He was working for NFIB when I first, early in my career. I wouldn't say first because he came in a little bit later, but he's one of those, just gets everything done quickly.
And if I can borrow a Jewish term here, what a mensch. Right? I mean, Tim Jackson, what a mensch, right? I mean, just a guy you can always call.
Oh my gosh!
And lean on.
I was worried about you when you said to introduce a Jewish term. What's he going to say?
No.
Yeah.
We keep it positive here, Peter. Blue sky all the way.
Yeah. But I also connected with Bill Owens early on in my career as well, and worked for him as research director and assistant finance manager or director when he ran for state treasurer, which gave me a great opportunity to get to know him and sort of work closely with
Colorado
Owens.
Petroleum ED before that, wasn't
That's
he?
exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. When he was sitting as state senator. Yeah, absolutely. So he's all too familiar with the energy industry, and really it was at a time when I think that was the only trade association out there for the industry, if I recall correctly.
No, KOGA was still around back then.
KOGA. Okay, that's right.
And IPAMS, but that's more regional. That's not state level. And IPAM's now known as Western Energy Alliance.
Oh, that's right. Okay.
And so,
thank you.
No, they certainly weren't the only game in town, but probably at the time most prominent.
There's so many alumni of Governor Owens that are in prominent positions all throughout town. It's an amazing network just in itself.
Yes.
Because I wasn't really involved in advocacy or politics or chambers of commerce or any of it at the time that he was governor.
Okay.
And I've sort of come to it later in life, and I just keep on meeting these people. And I said, I was this, and I probably know a dozen people that I sort of work with that were with his administration.
Well, if you think about it in terms of, you hear about NFL coaching trees. You know, Bill Parcells had a number of people who went on to be head coaches under him. You look at the coaching trees, so to speak. Bill Owens probably most prominent, along with Wayne Allard.
Absolutely.
I mean, so much talent came out of that Allard machine that you can't run across someone who's working this side of the aisle who didn't work probably for one of those two folks.
Absolutely.
So
that's exactly right, and some really great, talented people who've been touched in that role, for sure.
Well, you're a lucky person to have met all these people, but they also must have liked the way you carried yourself and your own character.
Thank you. It was a pleasure to work with those folks and again, I was sort of young and figuring myself out as I was building my business as well, and so it was nice to have really incredible mentors along the way and people who I could lean on.
Hard to place a dollar value on that.
Oh, absolutely.
So just choose one of your clients. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance, which has been around also for decades.
So as I mentioned earlier, it's the public policy arm of and a joint advocacy effort of the Fort Collins, Loveland, Greeley Chambers, Upstate Colorado, and Northern Colorado Economic Alliance. We cover the multitude of business issues from tax policy, transportation, labor issues, water, which is a huge issue up in the region, workforce development. And I would say that the broad issue categories have been consistent, of course, over all the 20 plus years it's been in existence. But then within each of those, sort of the priorities sort of move around, and one pops up to the top for a period of time and then shifts when we've sort of accomplished it or moved on. And for the last several years, we've been really focused upon on transportation funding as our primary concern.
Well, I've been wanting somebody to explain this. My wife asked me the other day, and I sort of understand it in the sense I've gone to 3 or 4 presentations, but there are 2 transportation initiatives which are on the ballot.
That's right.
And one is called by the very, very friendly Fix Our Damn Roads, which sounds like a good thing.
That's right.
I'm not sure there's any money involved in that, but then there's another one which is a bonding effort. I was hopeful that you could explain those to me.
I'm happy to
explain it to her.
Yeah, you bet. I'm happy to explain the 2 of them. The simplest way to explain it is one's a tax option and one's a not a tax option. Both of them have bonding elements to them. And both of them provide monies for the state infrastructure system, but the tax option also delivers funding to local governments as well as multimodal or transit options. So that's sort of in the simplest terms. The tax option is a 0.62 sales tax upon our 2.9% sales tax at present, so you're adding on, so you'd get to 3.62 or 52 as a total sales tax. And those revenues, they anticipate average revenue gain of about average over a 20-year period about $1 billion. Those dollars would be split 45% to the state system, 40% to the local governments, and then the balance 15% to other multimodal needs. Within the state system dollars, there are specific projects that CDOT has identified that they would fund through those dollars. The local dollars, on the other hand, would be delivered to local governments, but at present they aren't required to list out their projects, so they're being encouraged to sort of name what they would do with those funds. And then the multimodal piece has some requirements for specificity as well. And then local governments, interestingly, can also spend their monies however they wish, quite frankly, in transportation, whether it's roadways or transit. So they have full flexibility on those funds. On the other hand, Fix Our Damn Roads, which is a play on a phrase that we came up with as an NCLA, Fix Colorado Roads. We actually had legislation 2 years running that is similar to what Fix Our Damn Roads looks like.
See, had you gone to law school, you would have been able to trademark that and wouldn't be able to steal it from you.
I know, right?
So easily.
Exactly. It was very clever, but that is John Caldera for you, right? He's very clever in that way. His initiative utilizes existing state revenues, of which there's been a tremendous amount of growth in state revenues over the last couple of years, and pulls those dollars to pay for a $3.5 billion bonding program. And he specifies within his initiative which projects around the state would be funded, the interstate systems and some of the regionally significant corridors in the state. So that's a little bit of a long-winded way, but that sort of gives you the difference between the 2.
I think that's useful, and I haven't heard it explained that succinctly yet.
Oh.
So very, very useful in understanding that. And you may not want to discuss this currently, but does the NCLA have a position on either of these?
We have been in sort of the all-of-the-above type of camp. Both of them provide new revenues to the system. We've been advocating for a reprioritization of transportation in our state budget, but we've also said that there needs to be some new revenues moving into the state as well for these needs. We've been, again, advocating and been very proactive in our advocacy statewide on the issue of transportation. So we're sort of this all of the above. It all makes sense, and each of our individual organizations are weighing in on these as well.
You mentioned that CDOT has a list of programs. Does that list of preordained programs include the I-25 expansion north of Loveland to Fort Collins?
Yeah, so, of course, our effort has been underway for a while, and it started with this conversation around North I-25. And the short answer is yes, it does, and there's some projects currently underway where you've got some dollars in play. We have multiple segments, and we can talk a little about what that looks like and what it looks like for the I-70 corridor as well.
And I think we'll do that in our next segment. You can find this episode episode, as well as all others, on vitalforcolorado.com. Go to the Learn tab, go to videos and podcasts, and you can find every episode, including this one with Sandra Solin. We are coming up on our next segment. We're going to be talking about issues pertinent to Northern Colorado. Talk transportation, we'll talk energy, we'll talk economic development, all sorts of stuff. Stay with us. Peter Moore, Chairman and CEO of Vital for Colorado. Sandra Solin, Affairs Manager, Issues Manager for the Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance. Stay with us. Thank you for staying with us on Vital for Colorado Radio. I am your on-air producer, Jon Ekstrom, here with Peter Moore, our Chairman and CEO. Peter, thank you for hosting this show. Tell us a little bit about Vital.
Well, thanks a lot. You know, Vital for Colorado has been around for 5 years now. I'm amazed. Time just goes by.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
You're over the moon about it.
Yeah.
We came out of a Chamber of Commerce environment, out of the South Denver Metro Chamber, and the hope to maybe get a couple thousand people to support oil and gas industry, not because we're oil and gas people, but because we realize that so goes the oil and gas industry does most of the economy of the state.
Absolutely.
And so we started an advocacy group, organized a very, very good Chamber of Commerce. Now have 13 members of the Chamber. We've had many, many prominent people in the past. We have a great board now. And we've grown far beyond our expectations. We now have close to 90,000 Colorado citizens that have signed the pledge, including your client, NCLA, and the majority of its members. So thank you for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we also have 180 trade associations, 180 plus, and over 1,000 businesses. And so we're trying to advocate for responsible energy development. We're trying to have people realize that you need to balance safety in the environment and good regulation with the economic needs. And by some accountings, over 230,000 people in Colorado depend directly upon the oil and gas industry. And it'd be an awful shame for that to go away and be devastating, and perhaps we'll get into that. But our website, as John mentioned earlier, is www.vitalforcolorado.com. You can see our board of directors. You can see these podcasts. You can see our initiatives. We have lots of earned media, probably 1 or 2 articles a week.
And if you're interested in signing our pledge, you can go to vitalforcolorado.com/pledge.
And hopefully there's a big red sign there that says sign our pledge.
90,000 have figured that out, apparently.
Well,
that's pretty amazing.
It really is. I'm just amazed. The number keeps on growing. So the actual number is somewhere around 80,500. But I would imagine it'll go over 90,000 in the next 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
So we wrapped our last segment talking about transportation. We talked about the 2 ballot measures that are before voters. One has a tax option, the other does not. Let's put a button here on the transportation discussion. And can you tell us a little bit about some of the main issues facing Northern Colorado as it pertains to transportation?
Yeah, I think well, certainly North I-25 is sort of is what we call the backbone of Northern Colorado, and it is the primary route by which people come and go from Northern Colorado. We have really important arterial corridors as well, from 34 and US 85 and 287. So we discussed earlier just the amount of growth that's happening in the region. So at present, it's a 2-lane road on North I-25, and of course your other arterials are pretty jam-packed too. And in fact, North I-25 hasn't had any expansion of capacity since the 1950s.
Oh my. That's
remarkable, and yet we've had 4 times growth in that time. So it is a $1.8 billion project, a full, what referred to as EIS standard project, would cost $1.8 billion. It's 3 plus 1 lane, so 3 general purpose lanes and 1 HOV lane. We'll need that by 2031. And so we're working towards that goal, and each of these initiatives actually deliver dollars to that corridor, which is really important.
I think I needed it yesterday. If you travel out of state and you're coming back to Colorado on I-25, many, many times, and you never know what is happening or why, but you'll be stuck in a traffic jam and stopped 10 miles south of Fort Collins.
Yep, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
The good news is September 11th will be a groundbreaking on the initial phase of a project to add an additional lane, which is really exciting and is the product of a lot of work by many in our northern region, elected officials and the business community working very closely together in a very unified fashion. It's been an incredible example of regionalism and unified effort to deliver. This project is in the range of about $300 million, and local communities have contributed about $50 million of that to get a preliminary expansion done.
It sounds like both these ballot initiatives, although they approach it different ways, will provide some help to northern Colorado.
Absolutely.
So hopefully, come November, you'll have good news in the ballot box.
No, that's exactly right. I think for all of Colorado, the issue needs to be addressed, and it's difficult. I mean, part of it is a reprioritization or ensuring that transportation funding is a priority in the state budget, which it hasn't been.
Right.
But then also looking at just the available resources. There's $10 billion just in the state needs, and the state budget certainly can't take care of all of that, but it can begin to address some of it, and we can begin to have a conversation with the voters of Colorado whether they'd be willing to dip into their pockets too.
So northern Colorado also has one of the largest oil and gas basins in the country, the Wattenberg Basin.
We've got a little bit going on up there.
Got a little bit going on.
Yeah, it's so exciting.
And it's become much more attractive lately, given the midstream constraints in the Permian Basin in Texas. You've heard about some companies reinvesting in the DJ. Because we have terrific midstream capacity, we have the need here, we have the know-how, we have the workforce, and some of those resources that went to Texas are now returning here. What impact has that had on you and the work of the NCLA?
Yeah, energy is obviously is a key component. It's a tremendous economic driver for the region, but as you suggested earlier, for the entire state. Colorado has just historically been dependent in some respects upon the oil and gas industry. The movement talent has been and workforce has probably been the greatest challenge for our region, and I know the industry faces that as well, and we see it across industry sectors in the region, but certainly on the energy side, just keeping a really vital workforce has been, I know, an important component to bring about these resources, quite frankly, and that the direct job benefit to and what's happening in the region is just
well. You brought up
tremendous.
Ames Community College here a little bit ago, and I know when I was doing work in the region a lot more a few years ago. They were putting together programs, whether they were certificate programs or two-year programs, that help embolden that workforce.
Absolutely. Right. And we talked a little bit about the importance of the higher ed system in northern Colorado, and truly they are particularly the community colleges, reflecting the workforce needs in the area and marrying up with industry, which is so important. And the industry provides such well-paying jobs, jobs that perhaps couldn't be granted to in other sectors for these individuals who work in this space.
Certainly.
So to be an advocate for a moment, what would happen if the people of the state of Colorado voted in November to ban the oil and gas industry?
Yeah.
And make no mistake, it is a ban.
And John and I will explain that statement, but just as a hypothetical,
oh my gosh.
What does your crystal ball say about that
northern
prospect? Colorado,
the impact in northern Colorado alone would be tremendous. As we've discussed, it truly is lifeblood, and so we would see just a huge movement out of the region. When we saw just a slight decline in gas and oil prices, we saw a freezing and a halting of the industry there, and we saw real impact to that region. So we can only imagine what the effect of 97 would be. Our state is at a really critical juncture right now on public policy decisions and also who we elect in various roles. And so 97, all
now
of these
Proposition
questions.
112, no longer called 97.
It's important to get that lingo down.
And just for a little context, this is an initiative which will be on the ballot, now known as Proposition 112. And it contemplates a 2,500-foot setback from a whole list of areas, some which are quite vague, such as
not just dwellings
Right.
as it is now, but
areas of special interest, for example.
Yeah. Waterways, dry waterways,
Dry water, stream beds.
stream beds. Yeah, it's
You've been in
remarkable.
Colorado longer than I have, but what's a stream bed in Colorado?
It's a bed that can flow at any time, and particularly in the spring, hypothetically.
It may not be flowing now, but it could.
But
It
the
could.
important thing is that the state of Colorado, I think about a month and a half ago, did a study, and they said that this will remove from inventory, from the oil and gas industry, I think 84% is the figure that I remember, of the ability to produce those resources. And I don't know any business that would lose 84% of its inventory for which it's paid, I don't know, trillions of dollars probably.
Yeah, the investment's been remarkable.
So that's why many people, including myself, call it a ban.
Yeah.
Because I think that, would force people to go to other places where they can do business.
Yeah.
And there are many places you can do business.
Absolutely. And I know a number of your industry partners are holding off on some decisions today in anticipation of what the outcome might be for 97. So we're already seeing the effect, and people make decisions based upon what the public policy is in the state.
It's just not industry. It's all the other businesses,
That's right.
the hotels, motels.
That's exactly right.
The 7-Elevens that receive the money from the workers.
Yeah.
The people that sell homes.
Yeah.
The school districts that receive money. I think we did a show not too long ago with General Irv Halter, who's the head of DOLA, and he gave me a list of all the school districts, and I think it was over 185 school districts receive checks.
Wow.
Through the severance tax mechanism that exists in Colorado.
Yeah.
So I feel like I've just tossed a softball in the air.
Well, right, little softball. Well, I think it's important to note, you mentioned the 230,000 jobs. Those are direct jobs. I don't know that anyone's even done the calculation on what the indirect jobs loss and impact could be, but it's got to be a factor of 2 or 3 more than that, just that's actually touched and will be affected by an underpinning of the industry.
I don't think that people really know, because there aren't really metrics to calculate what happens when a $35 billion industry leaves your state.
Yeah.
Well, and one thing that's important to point out here, this is economic development not at the expense of health and safety. This is being positioned as a ballot measure in the name of health and safety.
Yeah.
In my estimation, those fears are overstated and misplaced, because having worked in this industry directly, having been on well sites, having been on frack jobs more times than I can count, the people who work on these places and the people who are out there every day are taking extraordinary safety measures.
Yeah.
You know why?
Their
Because
lives.
the people who work here live here too.
Right.
And there's a reason that we choose Colorado. We have a certain quality of life. We want to protect the air. We want to protect the water. We want to enjoy the same quality of life as everyone else. So it's important to note that although many of the fears of the people advocating for this, okay, it's okay that you're afraid, but to use this as a cudgel to end all oil and gas development across the state, which is effectively what this would do. When you start making things go 2,500 feet away from virtually anything, you are going to end it. There are going to be a lot of unintended consequences, and that's not how we do things in Colorado.
Right.
If you think about what happened in 2014, where Representative Polis was actually bankrolling these, a 2,000-foot setback, those were pulled in the name of cooperation. Let's put together a Blue Ribbon Task Force. Let's convene environmental activists. Let's convene regulators. Let's convene industry. And let's work out some solutions to some of these issues. No energy development is perfect, but that doesn't mean that it can't be done safely.
But in 2018, we're very fortunate that both gubernatorial candidates, Representative Polis and Mr. Stapleton, are Secretary Stapleton, are clearly against what used to be Initiative 97. And I think there was a fairly well-known presentation just about 2 weeks ago at the Colorado Oil and Gas Association, where Representative Polis came to what might be deemed to be an unfriendly audience and explained his position on this. And he said it's a balance, but within this balance, we can't ban the industry.
Right.
So I want to give them kudos for that position.
Sure.
Well, and Peter, one thing I'd like to touch on is one of the principles of Vital 7-Point Pledge is that we support all of the above. We support traditional oil and gas as well as renewable energy. And one of the most important tools in developing renewable energy, and you know this through your work through the NCLA, is natural gas as a backup. Can you talk a little bit about the intersection of traditional fossil fuel extraction and renewables and how it pertains to the economy of Northern Colorado?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you're absolutely right. This all of the above strategy, I think, is one that we as an organization absolutely embrace. There's a tremendous amount of pressure, political pressure for 100% renewable energy, and it sounds politically, unicorns and rainbows and so forth. It sounds wonderful, but the reality is it isn't. From a long-term and ability to deliver service, it's difficult to achieve, and so we sort of embrace this all of the above strategy, and recognizing those political pressures, having conversations with the various entities and make those decisions about the reality of that. Not everyone can go 100%. It's just not feasible in order to have a sustainable power supply.
Well, and people want the lights to turn on.
Right, exactly, and want to know that it's going to turn on. And yeah, the utility providers in our region and across the state are under a lot of pressure to do the 100% renewable, but they also are balancing out their requirement, their fiduciary responsibility to deliver power, and finding the right mixture of energy sources that can most effectively and cost effectively deliver service.
Well, and I think back to a quote that I read in 2013 by the head of the Solar Energy Industries Association. This is the largest trade association for solar in the country. And the CEO of that organization said, in 30 years, I think we can have 50% renewables, 50% natural gas. That is his vision. This is a person charged with getting as much solar to the grid as possible and saying in 30 years, maybe we get to 50% renewables and 50% natural gas. That, to me, is a stretch goal. He stated that as a stretch goal. So for politicians or for activist groups to say, let's do 100% renewables tomorrow, it's just simply impractical. How do we take steps to get there? Because I think you'd find very few people who are just diametrically opposed to renewables. That to me, that strikes me as an unreasonable position as well on the other side.
Well, it's kind of a false narrative, and one of our principles, we have some pretty simple principles, such as we would like to rely upon science and fact and not hyperbole, but the same gentleman that you're speaking of is actually, in his trade association, one of the biggest supporters of the natural gas industry, because in reality they're symbiotic.
Absolutely.
And in order for those alternative, they need natural gas, especially in northern Colorado. I think it's Tri-State has fast starters that can start these plants if they need within 20 minutes, and you only can do that with natural gas.
Yeah, Platte River Power Authority is the entity that provides, and in full disclosure, they are a client of mine as well.
And then Tri-State's upstream?
And Tri-State, yeah, they're, yep, exactly. And you're right, Platte River has done a remarkable job of finding that balance, and they're under the same political pressure everyone else is under for 100%. They've looked at the ways in which that could possibly be achieved and the timeline and what that looks like. But at the end of the day, it is about finding the necessary balance to, and that's a fascinating and compelling story that you shared with regard to 50-50 and a solar advocate saying the best achievable is 50-50 from his perspective. It's a stretch goal. So again, it's finding that balance and recognizing the symbiotic relationship that can occur, and it's okay that we're okay in that type of environment. And to your point, I don't think anyone is opposed to renewable energy and finding a way in which to amplify our mix, but it has to be done in a way that's cost-effective and reliable.
Right.
And it's not much of a stretch to say that the renewables couldn't get to 50%,
right,
unless they have the bridge fuel of natural gas
That's
to get
right.
there.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
Yeah. No, I think what we're talking about here is finding collaborative solutions. And you've worked with the Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance long enough. You probably remember it was like 1992, Greeley tried to just straight up ban oil and gas development within its city limits. And
I don't know that I knew that. That was in 92?
Yes.
Oh my goodness, that was a different time.
It's funny to think about now, because you think of Greeley, you think of being very pro-industry, pro-oil and gas development. We get it. This is part of our economy.
Yeah.
We run on this.
I actually think of just brand new school buses.
Right.
And from there, the state Supreme Court said you can't just out and out ban this. So let's work together to find some solutions. And again, I come back to 2014. You have a blue ribbon task force. You think about the new methane rules that came as a result of Governor Hickenlooper saying, okay, environmental community, industry, regulators, go in this room and you're not coming out until you've found a solution to the problem of fugitive methane emissions. And was everyone happy with that? Of course not. But they found something we could live with, and now we're better for it.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That's a better path forward.
Yeah, absolutely. That the ability to, like you say, sort of get into a room and hammer something out that's in the best interest of the entire state, not in the best interest of any one entity over another, is the only way, is the only path forward to get something done. And sort of the extremes on either end of the spectrum don't serve anyone's best interests in the end.
Well, in the words of George Costanza, we're trying to have a society here.
Exactly. Well, and I think it's important too, and as you mentioned, we talked about the 100% in the political piece, and Polis, it was mentioned, of course, he's opposing 97, but he is a huge advocate of, what's that?
112.
What? Oh, 112. Thank you. Got to get that lingo back. But he's a huge advocate for 100% renewable, and so it's sort of sometimes feels like a contrary position with respect to the industry.
A couple years ago, he bankrolled to the tune of many millions of dollars a 2,000-foot stud back.
That's right.
So his positions are complicated. I just wanted to thank him for his most recent opposition to Proposition 112.
Very
it's
important.
very helpful.
What else is cooking with our remaining time left? We don't have a ton. What else is a priority in terms of Northern Colorado? What should people know about the growth of the region or the challenges it faces?
Yeah, of course, growth in the region. We talked a little bit about talent and workforce development. That is probably one of the greatest challenges facing the region, to ensure across the spectrum in terms of industry that we've got the right people in place, because of the demand for employment and demand for workers it continues to grow. So that's something that we as an organization are beginning to tackle. We've been talking transportation a lot, and so we're going to start also talking about workforce. Water and is huge. We take the lead from important organizations up north like Northern Water and in their efforts to improve storage, and they've got a large storage project called NISP up there that's getting closer and closer. Northern Integrated Supply Project is getting closer and closer to actual reality, which is amazing. I know, very impressive. So
I hang out with Bill Jerky too much.
But water is also the integral piece to keep us thriving, and to address the demands that's coming and exist in the region.
Absolutely. Peter Moore, give us some plugs for Vital. Let's do it one more time. Where can people find out more about our organization? Where can they sign up? Where can they learn more about Vital for Colorado?
The best place to go to is the website, which is, I will spell it out, www.vitalcolorado, vitalforcolorado.com.
And Sandra, where can people find out more about the Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance? Where can they find out more about you? Anything you'd like to plug?
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. So at Northern Colorado Legislative Alliance, ncla.biz is where you can get more information about the organization. You can find me on LinkedIn, and then qtachrock.com. We're actually undertaking a new website design, new branding, so you'll see that up in the next month or so. But in the meantime, you can find me there. And the plugs, just, go Go vote this year.
That's right.
It is, as I said, it's a directional election, so consequential in so many ways, and it's just imperative that people take the time to get out.
We're talking about two very important things. One which might kill the state, which is Proposition 112, and then two transportation initiatives, which only can help the state. And one might be better than the other, and I think we're not really offering that opinion today, but we sure as heck need help with the roads.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Absolutely. You can find this episode on vitalforcolorado.com, as Peter Moore articulated. You can find it under the Learn tab, videos and podcasts. Every episode that we've done, we've got more than 60 hours of radio with thought leaders from across government, from industry, from economic development, and the wonderful and talented Sandra Solin, the newest addition to Vital for Colorado Radio. Peter Moore, our chairman and CEO, also an attorney with Robinson, Waters, and Ordorcio. We are pleased that you joined us for this edition of Vital for Colorado Radio. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Thanks, John.
Thank you, John. And thank you, Peter.